Hey guys, so I finally managed to farm up all of the new essence for Wizard, and it did take me quite a while to farm them all up because I had really bad luck with the loyalty bonus from the essence transfer. But today I wanted to give you my favorite dungeon and raid build for Wizard after having tested all of the new essence. So just to let you guys know, I did test a summons build with a 4-piece Shepherd and 4-piece Vithu, which included all of the new summons that we got. But this performed very underwhelming, and I will be going through the results in another video. But just so you guys know, the helmet, which summons the serpent, and the main hand, which summons the bird, the damage is really not that great. So I'm not going to be showing them today in this video, and instead I'm going to be focusing on the Disintegrate shoulders, which is the new shoulders that we got, which I feel like is the MVP of all the new essence that we got in the last patch. So firstly, let's go over the old dungeon build that I was using, and I'm sure you guys are already familiar with this build if you've seen my previous videos, but it's basically a build which focuses around doing as much damage with magic missile as possible. So we've got the Volatile Arbiter and the Blaster Cast here, buffing magic missile damage. We've got the Sprite Spark Chest, which gives us mobility with Lightning Nova, as well as the main hand, which gives us increased primary attack speed, which buffs the magic missile damage. We've got Disintegrate with Barbs of Annihilation, which dissolves the enemy armor, which allows us to do more damage with magic missile. And we've got Black Hole, which gives us a 28.5 damage buff because of the helmet, and the offhand, which gives us more cooldown of Black Hole and allows us to spam it so we can always have the 28.5 damage uptime. And then we've got Meteor, which is just dealing outright damage because of the pants here, which give increased Meteor damage. I'm also using 4-piece Banquet and 4-piece Vithu, which I feel like is the best combination for the set pieces for this build. So let's just take a quick damage baseline on the dummy for my old dungeon build with my max resonance, which at the moment is 3.6k, and we can compare it to the new dungeon build, which I'll be showing you guys. So I'm obviously going to use my trusty Brood Talon here to buff my damage. He has the Lingering Wounds passive skill, and let's just do a 30-second rotation and see what kind of damage we get with this build. And there we go. So we got, in a 30-second rotation, we got almost 1.8 million damage per second, and a total damage done of around 53.6 million, which is pretty good, I would say. And considering this build is not just for pure damage, it also has the mobility skill, which is the Lightning Nova with the Sprite Spark Chest, which allows you to kind of jump between mobs and run the dungeon at fast speed while also doing excellent damage. So I'm a big believer that if something is not broken, works very well, then there's no need to kind of fix it. So I didn't want to stray too far away from this build, but I did notice that the new shoulders, which the new Disintegrate shoulders, which we got from this patch, also does excellent damage. So I wanted to incorporate it into this build since we were already using Disintegrate, and this is the build that I came up with. So it's pretty much the exact same build. The only difference is that I'm using the new Disintegrate shoulders as well as replacing the Meteor pants for the Disintegrate cooldown pants, which allows you to maintain 100% uptime of this Disintegrate, which does an insane amount of damage. So I'm just using the Meteor with no essence, just the base Meteor, which still does a decent amount of damage. But yeah, this build just absolutely rocks in dungeons, and it does an insane amount of damage, and I'll be showcasing it to you guys now. And let's just see how much damage it does. It's the exact same gear. I've got the 4-piece Banquet, 4-piece Vithus, the 3.6k Resonance, and all my gear's the same. The only difference is these two essence here, and let's just see how much damage it does. So already this is looking like a lot more damage than the other build. But let's just take a full 30-second rotation and see how we do. And there we go. So in a 30-second rotation, my damage is almost 2.2 million, which is an insane amount of damage, and the total damage done is almost 66 million. So this is almost a full 23% damage increase compared to my old dungeon build, which is just insane. And if we take a look at the damage breakdown, it gives us a clearer picture of why this is giving so much more damage. So as you can see, Magic Missile is still doing 40% of the total damage that we do, but Disintegrate, as you can see, is doing 22.8%, which is, let me tell you, definitely a lot more damage than the old dungeon build with the Barbs of Annihilation shoulders would do, which is just crazy. So the weak skill of the build, you could say, is this Meteor here, which is doing not so much damage. The only reason I'm keeping it around is because I can't really fit in any other essence for it, unfortunately. It is still worth keeping because it still does do a lot of outright damage compared to all the other wizard skills, and it also helps proc your 4-piece banquet setup, so it gives you a bit more increased critical hit chance, which is always good. So let's take a more in-depth look at this shoulder essence and actually analyze why it's so bonkers. So if we take a look at the skill tooltip here, we can see what it actually does. So the Arcane Deputy, Disintegrate now summons an Arcane Deputy that will follow you for 5 seconds. It will continually channel a Disintegrate Beam, dealing 8,300 damage to all enemies caught in the beam and causing them to take up to 2% increased damage for 1.5 seconds, which stacks up to 5 times. So this can stack up to 10% extra damage. The cooldown becomes 9 seconds. But this cooldown actually becomes a lot lower because of the Pants Essence. So if you keep hitting stuff, the cooldown basically becomes 100% uptime. Like if you're just hitting stuff and it has an auto aim and it has a really long range, you basically have almost guaranteed, as long as there's enemies around you, you have guaranteed 100% uptime of Disintegrate. This is what makes it so powerful. This combination here is just absolutely insane. And I would recommend it if you're trying to push damage or dungeons, or the raid setup, which we'll talk about later. This new kind of combo synergy is just absolutely nuts, and you should always use it. So now that we've gone over the essence changes in the dungeon build, I want to talk about the other components of the build. So obviously you want to be using Weaver Tree. This is just really good because this is a primary attack based build and you're spamming your skills as well as your primary attack. So this is just a no-brainer. You want to use Weaver Tree. For the Awakenings, I would suggest going for these two if you have rank 10 gems. These two will buff your magic missile damage. So these would be the priority, the Volatile Arbiter and the Blast Cast. Next would probably be the Disintegrate package, which is these two, the pants and the shoulders. This would buff your Disintegrate damage, which is the second best skill in the build. Other than that, the Black Hole damage, these two will give Black Hole damage, and these two I think will give Lightning Nova damage, and it's not that good. It's not really worth going for those, but if you have 4 Awakenings, you'd probably get the most bang out of your buck for this build, just getting these two and these two essence, like I said. Other than that, for the magic properties, I'm not really going to bore you guys. Just go for the most offensive stats on your legendaries, and for the set pieces, you want to go for cooldown, helps a lot. Movement speed also helps a lot. The beneficial effect duration on your belt and your boots also helps a lot. For the Reforges, I would suggest going for 3-piece of the Vengeance set, just to buff your primary attack even more. And other than that, you should probably go for a primary attack damage and also critical hit damage from the Wildfire set. This will probably give the most maximum damage, which I haven't got in this setup. Beneficial effects would also work well, but something like this would probably be the most optimal, just to get the max damage. For the legendary gems, it comes as no surprise that Blood-Soaked Jade is probably one of the best gems to use for this build. You've got the insane damage increase as well as the 10% movement speed buff, which will help you get to the 70% movement speed cap, which is what you want. So Lightning Nova gives you 50% movement speed, so you want to get this to as close to 20% as possible through the 10% from Blood-Soaked Jade, and as well as the sets, movement speed, magic rolls you can get on the set pieces. So if I just use my Lightning Nova here, you can see that my movement speed is going to go all the way up to 68%, which is just shy of the 70% cap. So you want to have this movement speed throughout the dungeon, which is just allow you to clear them so much faster. As for the other gems, I would suggest using Gloomcast either as the gem or just auxiliary. This is a primary attack speed build, so the Gloomcast will just do an insane amount of damage. Bottled Hope is also good because you're using buffs with the damage buff from Black Hole as well as the Lightning Nova buff. Other than these 5-star gems, I would say Pain Clasp is also really insanely good on this build because you're continually doing these continuous damage effects, so you've always got this 24%. Mother's Lament is really good for the increased critical hit chance, and probably 1-star gems to use would probably be really good, would be Berserker's Eye or Everlasting Torment. Other than that, I would say you guys are free to use any gems which buff your damage or do some continual dot effects just to give you more chance to get this maximum crit chance from the Banquet setup. So now I'm going to quickly show the build in action inside a dungeon as well as the skill rotation, but just before we start that, I want to quickly talk about some general tips for running dungeons. So obviously most people know that if you're on Inferno 5, the recommended combat rating is 31.1k, but if you check the dungeon combat rating, it's a little bit higher. You've got 31.5k for Inferno 5 dungeons, which is 400 points higher, so you definitely want to make sure that you're above this combat rating for the difficulty that you're running. This will greatly maximize your damage because the maximum damage you can get is it can be increased up to 11% depending on how much higher you are over this combat rating requirement. The other thing which is really important if you want to maximize your damage is the secondary stats, mainly the armor and armor penetration. So you can see here that I've got about 4.2k armor penetration, which is significantly higher than the recommended for the difficulty. So I've got an increase of 54% critical hit damage, and for my armor I'm only slightly higher than the armor requirement, so I'm getting a block damage reduction by from blocking by 13%. So now I've switched over to normal difficulty to see how it compares, and you can see that for the armor pen value, now I've got 57% rather than 54%, but I'm getting most of it in Inferno 5. And for my block, I'm getting 18% damage reduction instead of the 11%, which is about 7% higher, but it's still a decent amount. I'm getting most of this bonus when I'm in Inferno 5. So I would always recommend just checking these values for your own character just to maximize your efficiency within the dungeon. So with that said, let's quickly start the dungeon and just talk about the skill rotation. It's a pretty simple build to play. So when the dungeon starts, if there's no mobs, you want to be using your Lightning Nova here just to get quickly through the dungeon, and it's not having much downtime as you can see here. So right now I'm reaching the end, and here I'm going to use my all my skills. Now you can see I'm just blasting through, and I'm playing this solo, so it's taking me a little bit longer. If you were playing this in group, then it wouldn't be quite as long, but I'm still blasting through these mobs with ease. And now we're going to take on the boss and see how the single target damage is going. So I'm always also pressing the Lightning Nova just to buff my primary attack speed, and you can see how fast this boss is just going down. Like, that was an insane speed just clearing the boss. So that's about it. I'm not going to full clear this dungeon. I just wanted to quickly show you guys how the rotation goes and just some quick dungeon gameplay with this build. So as you can see, this build works extremely well in dungeons, but it's also one of the best builds to use for Wizard full raids. The only thing which could be improved slightly is using a different chest piece. This chest gives you mobility with the Lightning Nova, but I would suggest switching out this chest for either Rampant and Inscrutable or Coat of Vexation, and this will give you less mobility but more damage on the Lightning Nova. So if you're within 100 points CR or you're over the CR for the raid, this is the setup I would recommend you use, and we can kind of see what the damage looks like if we just do a 30-second rotation here. We can kind of compare it to how much damage it's doing compared to the dungeon build without the Rampant and Inscrutable chest. And you should see that the damage is already looking a bit better than the dungeon setup. Let's just go for another 10 seconds here and see how it goes. And there we go. So as you can see, my damage is about 2.33 million, and with a total damage done of exactly 70 million, and this is slightly higher than my dungeon setup. I'll have the numbers on the screen just to compare it and you guys can see, but I am losing the mobility. So this is definitely the setup that you want to use if you want to do maximum damage within the raid, and this chest will help you out a decent bit. But if you're under the CR, then I'd actually recommend a different combo. You probably would want to use the new chest, the Halted Breath, which would increase the ice armor duration by 30%, along with the Hailstone Offhand, which gives you immunity charges, and this will allow you to survive a lot better. But just going for the damage, I'd say definitely keep the Rampant and Inscrutable chest. So now let's test how this raid build performs in a raid. So I'm actually going to try an Inferno 6 raid, maybe this one, where I'm actually under the CR. I'm actually 300 points underneath the CR. And let's just try it solo and see how it goes. So as you can see, right now I'm dealing 63% less damage. Let's just see how it goes without any survivability. It is taking quite a while to clear through these mobs, but I'm really curious to see how the single target damage goes against this boss. So I am taking quite a bit of damage, so I need to be careful here. But I'm not having to dodge too many mechanics, so thankfully this boss is not really one of the hard ones, and he's already down to half health. This is just insane because I'm like 300 points underneath the CR, but I'm absolutely melting this boss solo. Taking me a longer time to clear these small poison things rather than the actual boss itself. But this build excels as a single target damage, so I'm not surprised. And the boss is almost down here. The last 4 million. Let's do the ulti, why not? I think the ulti actually does a bit less damage, but it's fine. And the boss is down. So you can see this build is just insanely powerful. I haven't tried to change my resonance or anything, it's just 300 CR under and I'm completely destroying the boss. Do try out these builds and let me know what you guys think. If this has been useful for you, then please do press that like button and consider subscribing. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace.